Hello, and welcome to This Conversation Matters, a weekly show about the social issues shaping our communities, from race and inequality to justice, economic opportunity, and overall well-being. I'm Cherie Curry. Each week, I speak with experts and people with lived experience to help you better understand why these issues matter in our lives.
You'll hear when white men in particular, when they came up to speak about how they got into this business, it was always a friend. It was always a parent. It was always somebody who was close to them that brought them in. And then when you hear people of color talk about how they got in this business, it was always some type of like, somebody took a chance on me. It was happenstance. It was a miracle. It was, you know what I mean? And this is behind the camera. And so for me, it doesn't have to be that. That doesn't have to be our story. And so let's come together and create those relationships and get rid of the excuses and build up this industry in a way where we could realize its true potential.
That's Leonard Searcy, Emmy Award-winning actor, director, and producer. He's founder of WestBone Productions and creator of the MegaMixer. It's a chance for the community to come together to learn more about being in front of the camera as well as behind the camera. After we hear from Leonard, we'll have a short reading from Shayla Michelle and her book, Echoes in the Distance. Welcome. Today on This Conversation Matters, we're speaking with Leonard Searcy, who heads WestBone Productions. And he'll tell us a little bit about the MegaMixer and the importance of bringing community together at a time like this and doing it through media and the arts. But let's start a little bit. Leonard, why don't you first tell us a little bit about who you are and how WestBone Productions started?
Okay. Well, like you said, Leonard Searcy, I'm a Northside kid, Northside, Minneapolis. Born and raised, and I started WestBone Productions in response to. I remember when I first started in film, I went to a workshop that was hosted by SPNN, and one of the speakers was Michael Starbury, and so after it was very inspiring. After he spoke, I'm sitting at this table, and there's, the few Black folks who were there, who are sitting at this table, and they're all in a circle, and they're like, I'm not being chosen, nobody's seeing me, it's hard to find a gig, these different things. For me, it wasn't hard to find a gig. Like I was hustling, I was everywhere, right? But this is what my peers were experiencing. This is what people who look like me were experiencing. And it wasn't just Black folks, it was people of color in general, right? And so I had a conversation that same day with Michael Starbury, and I kind of sold myself up to be a producer, just inspired by this conversation at this table. And I'm like, hey, you're doing a project here. I would love to produce it, right? So about half a year later, he sends me an email right after New Year's, and he's like, "Hey, you still want to?" And this was 2018, like right after the ball dropped. He's like, "You still interested in producing my film?" And I'm like, "Yeah, right, right." So leading up to this, again, I've been on sets and behind the camera, rarely saw anyone who looked like me. So when we got to do this project together, Michael Starbury, who's a screenwriter, he's done projects like The Inevitable Defeat of Mr. and Pete, which was a screen at the White House by Michelle Obama, to the When They See Us series about the Central Park Five, and which they were nominated for like 16 Emmys, I think, that year. So he's done some amazing work. And so for him to be one of the first people to produce a project for, it was a big deal. Um, but if you were to look at our crew, it was very diverse. We had women, we had brown people, we had white folks, we had different people who were part of this small little crew. And it was the start of the dream, start of the vision of what should be and what could be, you
Okay.
know.
And then that trajectory led you into, you say, it started that dream. So bigger dreams, I mean, dreams that were always there, but being able to get those dreams out. Tell us about the next project after that.
So yeah, so the next project was a film on Prime right now called This or That. There was a film that I did called 39 Seconds where um, I was very much in the middle of helping recruit crew or being a part of that process, and also was cast as the lead. And it's a docu series or it's a docu film about John Wesley Donaldson, and so it was a high honor to play that role. John Wesley's greatest baseball player no one's ever heard of. But anyways, so I did projects like that, and every project that I did, what you'd notice is that the crew was always very diverse. And so what I started to experience were producers, directors, casting agents would be like, "Hey, Leonard, you know somebody, brown, black, somebody who could do this or do that, or and I'm connecting people to opportunities for years while still asking producers and directors like, "Hey, how come y'all can't find, these black and brown people or women?" And the excuse was the same every time. We don't know where to find them. We don't
Mhm.
know where they're at. And so that was the reason why I created the MegaMixer. Is because it wasn't just important for us to tell our own stories. It was important for us to be the storytellers in the different ways that were possible. And um, film, television, that is very high yielding. It's a very high yielding business. Like people get paid pretty decent wages. And so helping people get access to opportunities to take care of their families, um, access to their dreams, just experience being in these spaces that have been a cult to them for just way too long, for no better reason than they're just not in the right communities.
Right. And I know we see that across the board with so many industries still where we hear, I don't know where to find. They're not applying for these jobs. I don't know where to find them. And we have to do a little bit of education in that regard as well. It's not just about promoting our own, but it's also about educating those industries about where to find us.
Well, yeah. I mean, and for me, I don't want to educate you on where to find us. What I want is to say this is where we like basically say like the problem is, or it's not that we're not where you're at. The problem is some people just don't choose to see folks
Mhm.
because they're just not trained to see people who look differently. The homeless deal with this where somebody could be suffering and you'll walk right past them. You'll look right past them as you're driving, things like that. Like that same effect is felt by people of color sometimes as it pertains to people who hold opportunities, right? And it's not just, it's not like only people of color suffer with being unseen and things like that. But when we talk about this particular industry, film, TV, sports, those different things, we know that when we look at who dominates these industries, they don't they don't look like people of color, and a lot of times they don't look like women. And I'll just give this example. When I first started doing the Mega Mixer, and I have diverse groups of people come up and speak, you'll hear when white folks came up to speak, white men in particular, when they came up to speak, and they'll talk about how they got into this business, it was always a friend. It was
Mhm.
always a parent. It was always somebody who was close to them that brought them in. And then when you hear people of color talk about how they got in this business, it was always some type of like somebody took a chance on me. It was happenstance. It was a miracle. It was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and this is behind the camera. And so for me, it doesn't have to be that. That doesn't have to be our story. You know, we're obviously looking at there there are barriers to entry because certain people because you don't have the relationships. And so let's come together and create those relationships and get rid of the excuses and build up this industry in a way where we could realize its true potential.
Okay. And part of that is about helping each other, right? In terms of
Exactly.
as people of color. And we know I'm gonna use an example where you also hear this with some immigrant stories where someone will say my either my parent or my grandparent came here with nothing but the clothes on their back and maybe $1 in their pocket, but they went on to go build some type of empire, and empire is all relative in terms of where you are in your life. But some of that was also done without the same networking. But through some research, I've seen that certain immigrant communities also, I'm going to say, I won't say stick together. That's not the right verb, but they're supporting each other.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
I mean, I think in this industry, like there are a lot of black and brown people who either do this work, and this is the crazy thing, is I remember I was on a commercial for Verizon, and this has nothing to do with Verizon because Verizon doesn't pick the crew, but they flew in two directors from Australia. Now, first of all, I'd never met an Australian before, and they found them in Germany. And so for me, it was kind of like, okay, I know that there's a black director down the street, right? I know that there is a brown script supervisor down this block downtown here. I know, so for me, I'm like, hey, like, how did you find these people? You know, and me, I'm just an extra, on the set. I'm just, I'm nobody to the project, but that don't stop me from being in everybody's business ever. So, they'll tell me, how they went about doing things or whatever. And for me, it's like, how are they a part of this pipeline? And these people that I know who do amazing work, they're doing their own projects and they're doing it in separate places where even the black people don't know the other black people who do it,
Right.
right? They're doing it by themselves. The brown people don't even know the brown people who do it. The native folks don't always know. And so, but the white folks know the other white folks who are doing it. And so to me, there's a lot of potential with the Mega Mixer. My big picture is it's not just about film anymore, right? We've brought in sports, we brought in these other really dynamic, amazing industries, fashion, music, law, business, like, you know, because I believe that when industries intersect, they can help solve each other's problems, right? So it's a way easier way to a job, right? But if we want to build up an industry here, a film industry here, and there are people who have money, who have a diverse slate of stories to tell. The problem with here in Minnesota is the powers that be aren't doing enough work to build it up in a diverse way so that if I'm from Atlanta or if I'm from Ecuador, or if I'm from wherever it is, and I want to shoot something in Minnesota because of the incentive or because of whatever it is, I don't see anybody who looks like the people in the story that I want to tell because they're not a part of your pipeline.
Right.
because you didn't want to do the. So what ends up happening is black folks will do their thing, brown folks to do their thing. Native Americans definitely got a movement for filmmaking here right now. But the problem is like none of that represents what Minnesota is. You know, us being in these silos and we're weaker that way. It's just to me, like absolutely make sure that we're looking out for each other and that you're able to, you know, I recall listening to Samuel Jackson, who's like, he'd do an audition and he's like, oh man, I wasn't for that. But I know, you know, there were Lindo was, so I call him up and be like, hey man, you got to get down here on a fifth, you know, and do this audition because it's perfect for you, right? And then he'll go down there and he'll kill it. He'll get the role. That's money to pay his rent for, you know, the next 2 months, right? I feel like that's part of that ecosystem, being in the space to learn how producers move and, you know, how people get money, you know, in order to make projects and things like that. There are going to be very few people, but there are going to be people who connect with that aspect and want to be people who are giving the opportunities. And now they're like, okay, well, I want to make sure my DP is black and my this is black and my that is black and whoever's black. And that'll come from that as well. What I'm talking about is like when we're building an industry, like when my grandfather worked on the railroads in Indiana, what I'm talking about is it's just the railroad is so much bigger than these little like ideas that keeps us in our, you know, in our little boxes. And that's, you know, so I look at the MegaMixer with that potential, you know.
And I'll say too, you remind me of one of my previous episodes of This Conversation Matters when I was speaking with general counsels, and and not all of this made it to the podcast, but at least some of this did make it, where a couple of them were saying, as as a general counsel, when they are taking on cases for clients, they make a point of saying to that client that they want other Black attorneys working those files with
Yeah,
them. And if not, they're happy to go take their business elsewhere. And how one of them, and I'll name Brian Phillips, how he phrased it, if I remember correctly, was if as general counsel, if he doesn't put out there that it's important to him to have diversity on those cases, then it's like sending a message that it's just not important at all.
absolutely. Absolutely. That silence is communicating something also, you know. One of the things that one of the reasons why I think that our incentives or even our ask for a higher incentive here in town, here in the state, I think where it could get more teeth is if we put in the bill that there has to be a certain percentage of this group and a certain percentage of this group and a certain percentage of women, and et cetera, et cetera. Because, you know, if you want, like, we know the story of, we know our story, we know our history, where we went through slavery, went through Jim Crow, we've gone through, I mean, to name it all, anyways, um, the entire time we were going through those nightmarish realities, we were still paying taxes. We were still paying taxes. So to me, why am I paying taxes to incentivize people who don't incentivize or who aren't looking for me, who aren't giving me a return on my investment, especially if this is my dream as well? Why? Why is that not part of the conversation? You know, why do I continue to position myself to get passed up, like you're saying? So the conversation of diversity, of Black specifically, of Brown specifically, is more than just important. It's like if these people are trained not to see you, then you have to make them see you. And that's just, that's just part of the strategy. It's got to be.
Okay. And then, so now explain the Mega Mixer a little bit more. And I'm gonna say in general, regardless of what year. This is your fifth
Fifth.
year.
Yep. Year five.
So you mentioned a little bit of that purpose, but kind of walk us through a typical weekend of what it is that you're doing with the Mega Mixer.
So day one, Friday, June 12th, we have our gold carpet. So gold carpet, it's hosted by Malik Brown and Alea McQueeston. And these are model actors, very, very accomplished folks. And then after that, we have um, a fashion show by Troy Williams. Troy is This is his 40-year anniversary as a designer, or his company, Vandalism Design. And he was the guy that in the early 2000s designed all the nightclubs, Escape and all those different nightclubs downtown. So he was the one who designed all those different places. But he's putting on a fashion show. And then afterwards, we have Nando STL, who's a hip hop artist signed to T-Pain's label. Super duper talented, just really, really special vocalist. So looking forward to that. The next day we have panelists, workshops. We have films that are being screened, podcasters, bunch of networking, and we're downtown Minneapolis at Hennepin Arts. And then Sunday is going to be very similar to Saturday, but we have Michael Schultz, director of Car Wash and Cooley High, is coming out. We got Wen Thomas, legendary production designer. Brenda Gilbert, who's legendary in her own right, she co-founded Bronze Studios. And Bronze responsible for films like Fences and Judas and the Black Messiah, uh, The Photograph with Issa Rae, etc. So we got a lot of folks from Hollywood. We got some NFL folks. We got, some people in music and boxing, etc., who are coming out to share their stories, to share their experience, and to share opportunities.
Okay. And that's a great lineup for this year. And I know just even see the part about Car Wash, right? I grew up watching a Car Wash. So, but
Hmm.
the, so I can say, regardless of the given year, so basically you're looking at a red carpet event, you're looking at having entertainers and production, from the producer side, director side, out of Hollywood, panel discussions, and then this aspect that's going to be actually the mixer part, I'm going to call it as well. So outside of listening to discussion, there's also this opportunity for people to kind of gather and mingle with each other as well.
That's the most important part is people are meeting one another, talking, being able to kind of discuss and digest what they heard from panelists and keynote speakers and fireside chats and workshops, films, things like that. Just being able to just be present in space. We also have like a recharge space for people who have social batteries that run out pretty quick. We got a very quiet rooftop area that people are able to recharge at. We have, music just along the way, like you said. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. The big vision is for it to be our own South by Southwest of the North,
And open to everyone.
open to
So,
everybody.
yeah. And from past years, what have you seen in terms of a success that has come out of a Mega Mixer that has maybe turned into something else, or maybe it's one individual who learned so much or got so much out of that weekend that they went on to
Oh,
fill in the
it's
blank. What's an
it,
example?
it's so many stories. I mean, we have like 25% placement rate, right? So we have people who come in and they get jobs. We've placed people with Netflix, Best Buy, CW. committee films, and this is behind the camera,
Mhm.
right? But the people in front of the camera as well. You go there, you meet directors, right? You want to act, you meet producers, you meet casting directors, you meet the people who are there to give you opportunities. So we have people like Daniel Owens. Daniel Owens, he came to the first mixer, and he got a mentor there. He got his first PA job, and now he owns his own grip and electric company, and he's working on films across the country, big films. We have Oogie Push, Native American woman who started, her career at the first mixer and went on to win, two regional Emmys that same year, but she's now somebody that people call to produce, and she's a director. She just came out with a film recently, and she did no film prior to coming to the mixer.
Okay.
And to our host, Drew Sutton, who's, he came to the mixer and he leaves and he's got this big film that he gets to do up north. And there's so many stories that have come out of the MegaMixer, and there's so much success. And I honestly think that 100% of the people who come leave with something, you know. There are relationships, there's connections. So my advice to anybody who comes is just talk to people, you know. Like it's not one of those things where um, people are want your resume once you show up and it's like, oh man, I haven't done this, that, and the third. One of the beautiful things about getting people like Justin Dixon, who just did, one battle after another to come out, or Win Thomas, or we we, we were supposed to have Carl Weathers a few years ago. But these are people who, or even Michael Schultz, these are people who want to give back
Hmm.
to people who are coming in, who are, getting started, people who've been in it and trying to get to that next level. Exactly who you are is all you need to be in order to be qualified for the room. And so, you know, I just um, I think people should come, be okay with telling their story. You know,
And we know outside of Minnesota, people do know us as a music scene, right?
yeah,
So where that's going to be, Prince and The Time and Bob Dylan, and we know that music has been recorded here and made here and history made here. There's also this aspect that I feel mainly Minnesotans know about our film history. And if maybe some people who are film buffs outside of Minnesota kind of realize, right, where again, regardless of race here, we have the Coen brothers, right, who made films here. And and I find that people who are from Minnesota who end up, I'm going to say in Hollywood, right? They find a way to incorporate Minnesota into some
and
of
all
their
this,
stories somehow. And
absolutely.
yeah. And so to have more of that, there aren't any examples coming to my mind right now of ones made by people of color.
Uh,
But I know that there must be.
Interesting, interesting.
So,
Dang, that's a really interesting point right there. Because I could think of so many films that just reference Minnesota randomly.
mhm.
It's like you're in the middle of London, and for somehow y'all are a Minnesotan family, or you got a cousin in Minnesota that you had a bad deal with or whatever, and so is that's true. Like I think what you're speaking to is a couple things. Um, pride of state, pride of where you're from. But I also think about you're talking about how you have the power to be a storyteller. Like to me, we may think that maybe it was um, screenwriter who wrote, Minnesota, right? And in those lines. It could have been a producer who's from Minnesota. It could have been an assistant director who real quick had to say, all right, just say Minnesota, or it could have been it, there's a lot of opportunities for you to insert your story into these projects. So hair and makeup, I mean, and when you talk about like who comes from Minnesota, like I learned Will Smith's barber is from Minnesota,
Hmm.
right? This is what I mean by when industries intersect, they solve each other's problem. I'm sure that there was a instance where Will needed a barber and this guy came through. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just doing what he usually does. Uh, to the different actors, the different writers, like I said, Michael Starberry, this is somebody who's spent a lot of his life here in Minnesota and just did some years ago did $100 million deal with Netflix, and that's as a writer, and so your stories, your perspective, even here in Minnesota, there's a lot to be proud about, I think is your point, your ultimate point.
Right. Right. And I'm also gonna go back to one thing that you said earlier with when you used the word just an extra and whatever the commercial or the film was. And I can't have us leave with your modesty because you're also an Emmy, right? You won an
Yeah,
Emmy or
yeah,
nominated for an Emmy? Did you
yeah.
win? You won the
When
Emmy.
won it, yeah.
Yeah. So
So
so,
yeah,
so tell
I
me a
was
little
on
bit
one
about
team. It was
about that.
it was a commercial. It was a commercial job. So it was for Regions Hospital. Actually, I just got a check the other day. Got a residual check. This is probably 4 or 5 years, I want to say. But it was great. I did it with Jim Craven. Um, it was an amazing crew of folks. We shot it here in Minnesota, and I remember when I found out, I don't remember where I was. I just remember I'm sure I was at home, and I'm just sitting at home, and three film friends hit me up at the same time, and they're like, "Hey, you just won an Emmy." I was like, "What?
You
What do you
didn't even
mean?"
know you were up, you didn't even know you were up for an Emmy.
Right. I didn't know nothing. I was like, what you mean? He's like, yo, like, I'm looking at your picture right now. It's up on so they sent me a screenshot of it. Um, and I'm like, oh, like, is there money that come with that? You know,
Right.
I'm sure I was somewhere broke, just like,
Yeah.
uh, how much you get for that? But it's it's amazing. It's been amazing. I've been able to win other awards along the way. Uh, I will say this though, like after creating the MegaMixer, I virtually like and trying to help other people realize their vision. I've put mine on the back burner. I've realized, and so I think I'm gonna start getting back into it. But it's been a while since I've really been able to do anything in front of the camera on stage or any of that. I got an audition tomorrow actually, so
Oh, okay.
I'm
Okay. Well,
excited
good
for
luck.
that.
Good
Yeah,
luck with that. So
thank you.
yeah, and it's not about putting that vision on the back burner because you are pursuing another vision that's
Yeah,
really important and passionate to you.
yeah.
What advice would you give though to up and coming actors here in Minnesota? So outside of the networking part, but what advice about pursuing that as an industry?
Man, like I'm not super religious, I should say, but I I believe that um, God is always talking back to us. We're always putting out questions that we need answered into the cosmos, consciously and subconsciously. And God is always inviting people into our lives and opportunities into our lives, so whether we see it or we hear it or we smell it or whatever it is, there's some type of communication that's saying. go through this door or don't go through that door or whatever that is. My advice is to learn to listen to God and um, don't listen to God with your desires. You got to listen with submission. I don't know how to better say that, but that's my advice. My advice is just, if this is for you, great. If there's a part of it that's for you, because you may, again, like come to the Mega Mixer and then, you know, set yourself on a road to be like a mogul in real estate. I don't, there's no telling, but if there is something in you that's like, I should go that way or I should do this thing, even if you feel uncomfortable doing it, you got to trust that everything's going to be okay once you commit to that. You got to. That's part of that listening.
Okay. Now tell us how to get tickets to the Mega Mixer.
Okay. Yeah. For tickets to the Mega Mixer, go to westboneproductions.com. If you're on Eventbrite and you're able to look up the Mega Mixer, Google Mega Mixer Westbone, or you can. And here's the other thing: is because right now we have a sale, we got 50% off. If price is an obstruction for you, um, you can contact me directly on social media, Leonard Searcy, uh, or you can email me at Searcy@westboneproductions.com, and you don't have to tell me a story. You just say, "Hey, I'd like to come," and we'll get you some tickets.
Okay. Thank you. I have to ask one more question. Where did the name Westbone come from?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. So, I'm one of those people who always pay it back. I know where I come from. I know where I'm going. Westbone comes from the people who really set me on the course that I'm on in a major way. It's two men. One is Kevin West, who is he's like a father to me, but he's you can find him over at the Capri Theater. He's general manager over there. But he directed me first. I like to say he showed me what being black was
Mm.
in that process of directing me in this play called A Soldier's Play. He showed me that as a kid I had been seeing my blackness as a caricature, and
Mm.
not like a real, not the fullness of what that actually is. And then my brother Bone. Um, and my brother Bone was somebody who instilled a ridiculous amount of confidence in me because, I was like Mikey, right? Mikey would do it. You know what I mean? It was like, all right, well, if you said I could do it, I'll do it. And now I'm able to tell myself, like, if that's what you got to do, you'll do it, you know. And so they are the foundation of whatever it is that I build as it pertains to this film thing and this kind of world. And so, yeah, thank you for asking that question.
Okay. And that is one way to pay it forward, remembering the people who helped to inspire you to get you where you are.
Absolutely.
Okay. So thank you for joining us on this Conversation Matters. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Sheree. I really appreciate it, and super excited to see like this whole thing cut up, and I look forward to sending this over to our PR team so that they can share it everywhere.
We'll get that done too.
Okay. All right.
Good.
All
Oh,
right.
good.
Hello, I'm Kennedy, and every week we take you beyond the story, an NABJ Minnesota program brought to you by All About the Culture and Power 1047.FM. Beyond the Story introduces you to business owners, community leaders, and media media professionals. Join us after This Conversation Matters for Beyond the Story. Today on Beyond the Story, we're speaking with Shayla Michelle Reaves, a Minneapolis-based journalist. She is the author of Echo in the Distance, an illustrated children's book that serves as a tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech.
My name is Shayla Michelle, and I'm the author of Echo in the Distance.
And now, putting you on the spot, is there one paragraph that you can read from the book?
Sure.
Okay.
Or I could tell you the whole thing, but whatever you prefer. Okay. He bellows boldly. The sweet sound of anticipation rolls from tongue to lips to dance in a distant echo. His body trembles as his words flow freely into air, voice tearing into tangled blue skies, parting the thick clouds of ignorance with words resonating towards the sun. Do you hear the echo in the distance? It runs within the crowded river of watchers, gushing through the horizon, waves of endless observers edging it onward. Just look as they roar, watch their hands ring wild with applause, watch their eyes gleam glad with the promise that tomorrow's sun should yield a brighter day. Just watch, his eyes so stern of fearless design, unwavering in the surge of promise that arises. He looks ahead. The creep crawl of tremulous times is mounting in the wind. Just listen as the thunder grumbles, each rumble of resistance cackling in the clouds. Watch the clouds as they fill with rains of frustration tip-tottering as the drip, drop, drip of tears drops down the faces from the eyes. The watcher's eye. Suddenly thunder splits the skies, ripping hearts, persecuting lives, slitting the evil, dismembering the lies, devouring ignorance in passionate cries, engulfing injustice entangled in time, swallowing fear in fragile minds, digesting change, desegregating the times. People are people, not color-coded crimes. When all has been spoken, the staggering winds have blown, and battered men and women still stand. Just listen, listen. Do you hear the echo in the distance? It's knocking on the horizon. The timeless tap of progress pounds from past, present to now. Now I am a face in a river of watchers, captivated, captured in the sweet sound of anticipation lapping against my ear, a tugging whisper pulling at my mind. Anticipation tears at my soul, untangling the clouds within me. The voice is now within me. Words that run with character, words enveloped by a rush of color, are made manifest in the peaking sun. I am that sun after the storm. My rays, the sentiments once hidden in time, truth, acceptance, understanding, the outstretched arms that reached, teaching the lesson that rolled from tongue to lips to transcend time. People are people, not color-coded crimes. People are people. Just listen, listen. Do you hear the echo in the distance?
Thanks for listening today. I'm Cherie Curry, and this has been This Conversation Matters on Power 104.7, supporting the mission of the Minnesota chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists. Follow us on Instagram at NABJMN and me at Cherie Curry Media. And be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. Let's keep the conversation going.